Hi, this is Neil with Walk and Bike Mendocino. I'm here with Erich Sommer and Dan Gjerde in Fort Bragg. We're here at the corner of Herald and Fur in front of Cotton Auditorium to talk about some of the safe routes to schools and traffic improvement projects that have done here. Dan, Erich, thanks for joining me. Erich, it was your idea to come on by here and show this particular block. What is it about this block that appeals to you?
Well, it's this 3 or 4 block section running north-south on Herald Street here. That starts down there at about Oak Street, said Dan. And I think it's indicative of everything that you can do to make a street, a section of a neighborhood more bike and pedestrian friendly, from bulb outs to slightly elevated pedestrian crosswalks, increased signage. The city of Fort Bragg has done a really good job of putting all that together in this 3 or 4 block streetscape.
For years, the city was getting complaints about people speeding up and down this road because, as you can see, it's a really wide road. People do drive quickly up and down this street, or historically they did. And so for years, the city council, we would get complaints from people about how fast people would drive up and down the street. Maybe not during school hours, maybe 11 o'clock at night. Again, wide road, people racing up and down the street. They'd ask for the police department to be here to ticket people, to cause warnings, because some of them might have been the same drivers every day. But it's impossible for the police department to be everywhere at all times, and so that's where engineer a road so that people will drive at the speed limit is ultimately the best solution, because you just can't have police officers everywhere at all times.
So here we are at the corner of Herald and Madrone, and why don't you guys tell me a little bit about this corner and what interests you about this?
Along this 3 or 4 block stretch leading up to the Cotton Auditorium where we started, you have all sorts of different combinations of pedestrian-friendly and motorist-friendly improvements to the streetscape that work together. And here, in terms of infrastructure, the only infrastructure often being the most timely and costly, the only improvement here is the bulb out in the sidewalk. But you do have complete signage with the arrow below, in combination with the bulb out in a crosswalk, and then a bike lane running down the street. And I think this particular crosswalk serves as a good example.
And one thing I'd like to add is, notice this is a high visibility crosswalk, and so the driver, when they look at a traditional American side crosswalk, they'll see barely 2 thin white lines going across the road. But these are more the European style crosswalks in that they run in the direction of the traffic, and so they're visibly more visible to the driver. And so it raises the visibility of the crosswalk being here, and that hey, there's a pedestrian right here waiting to cross.
And what's the bulb out do for pedestrians?
It brings the pedestrian farther out towards the travel lane. They're not in the travel lane, but they're closer to the travel lane. They have a sense of security because they are standing on a raised bed of concrete. But it also then, because they're closer to the travel lane, they're more visible to the driver, like, oh, this person really wants to cross the street here.
All right, so what is it about this intersection that you guys...
I think we're here to show that this pedestrian island is one of 3 in a row. So there's 3 of them
at each block, at each intersection, at each block.
And so it has the effect of visually narrowing and substantially narrowing the travel lane just a little bit. Again, this is a very wide road to begin with, so it kind of needed something to narrow the travel lanes a little bit, because historically people would race up and down, at least some people would race up and down Herald Street. And so it causes people to drive a little bit slower up and down Herald Street, which a lot of kids walking here up and down the street after school and going to school. And so the street needed some improvements to make it easier for people to walk up and down and cross the street at different points.
So you feel like they've been effective in slowing speeds?
I think in particular, I think these were very helpful.
One other thing to note is these are crosswalks that don't have that striping. It makes the crosswalk more visible, but those pedestrian islands have the added benefit of drawing a motorist's attention to the crosswalk and making it more apparent, more visible.
Okay, what do we have here, Erich?
So we're 1 block up from the first set of pedestrian islands, Redwood and Herald. This also has the ever so slightly elevated crosswalk. Again, this particular intersection is just really indicative of this whole stretch of street, 3 or 4 block stretch of street, in that there's no bulb out here, but you've got great signage with the little arrow below. You've got a very slightly elevated crosswalk used in conjunction with the pedestrian islands, creating with a dedicated bike lane running north-south along the street as well. All of that together creates a safe and sane streetscape for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists.
So Dan, why don't you tell us about these speed bumps here?
So one element of this Safe Routes to School project around the schools, in 2 different locations, they have these speed bumps. So these are temporary in that you can remove them. They're not. It's not asphalt. It's rubber, and there's a little give to it, obviously, when you drive over it. But you know, I think it's been fairly controversial, the installation of these. Now they are effective. They do slow people down for sure, but there's really no way as a driver for you to drive at the speed limit and not run over it. And so I think something to think about is some of the other improvements we saw. There are ways for you as a driver to abide by the rules, be driving slowly and safely, and you're not encountering any disruption to your car or to your driving, because you're not riding over anything that's really noticeable. Like that raised crosswalk is so subtle. It's not like you feel like you were punished in any way for driving over it. These, on the other hand, you definitely feel it, and so I think some drivers have kind of felt like, hey, I'm abiding by the rules, I'm not speeding, I'm slowing way down, and I still feel a little bit kind of punished for driving over this thing. And so I think if I were to advise someone on this, I would say probably go for all the other things and maybe not this, unless you have a really extreme case. And these maybe something that people might consider is this for maybe a parking lot where people are driving 5 to 10 miles an hour, because that's really where you have to really be driving just about that speed to not feel like you hit something fairly substantial. Notice that driver just went across it. They definitely felt it, and it's not going to cause damage to their vehicle, but you feel it and it's a little uncomfortable. And so my advice would be try the other things first.
And the other things are?
The other things are the pedestrian islands, the bike lanes that visually narrow the travel lanes, the bulb outs that put the pedestrians a little closer to the visual line of sight for the drivers, the high visibility crosswalks. All those things I think are all very positive, and the drivers are not going to be unhappy with that. It's going to be popular improvements for the pedestrians, the bicyclists, and the drivers are not going to be unhappy with it.
So that's our little Fort Bragg Street Films attempt. Thanks for your patience with our kind of slapdash effort to put it together. But we hope that you appreciate the information, and if you like this kind of project and would like to see it done in your neighborhood, please join us, Walk and Bike Mendocino. You can get on our email list either from our website or from our Facebook page. Donations always help, but have a great day, stay safe out there, and you can leave your car at home, okay? Take care.